My boy was about to be born. I was auditioning like crazy, preparing the house, calling the doctor. Sure enough, they called and said, you have an audition at 11 o'clock. And I almost said no, but again, my wife said, this is what you do. So I showed up there very nervous. Contractions have started. And there is a line of like 24 seated in a corridor. And I'm not going to make it. My boy's going to be born and I'm not going to be there. Hi there. I am Castulo Guerra from Argentina, an actor. And I had the honor to play Seth Mendoza in Star Trek, The Next Generation. In the third season, I believe it was episode 56. And this, my friends, is the wonderful Trek Untold.
Welcome back to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I am your host, Matthew Kaplowitz. This week on the show, we're talking to a name who you might not be super familiar with, and that's because a lot of his career has been spent in the theater. And that's not to say he hasn't done his lion's share of work on TV and film, but really his true passion lies in live performance and especially in experimental performances with experimental theater. This week on Trek Untold, we're speaking with Castulo Guerra, a name that I'm hoping that I'm saying correct, and Cass does correct me as I do the interview here early on, you'll notice, so I'm doing my best here and hopefully I got it right that time. But Cass, as he lets me call him during this chat today, will be familiar to Trekkies for his role as Seth Mendoza in the third season TNG episode, The Price. But you've seen and heard him in all sorts of other things, some of which we'll talk about today, but really, the bulk of the chat here is going to be about his time in theater, because I think that is some truly fascinating stuff, and we're digging into a real section of theater that I know nothing about. Mr. Guerra is a Latino performer who has been working in the theater scene since he basically moved from Argentina, his homeland, at a very young age to pursue acting. And it's really a heck of a story. You're going to hear it during this episode. And his journey to get him onto the stages of New York, that alone is just super inspiring and motivating. But his tales about working with young actors like Denzel Washinton, Morgan Freeman, Raul Julia, all folks who were basically just getting their start around the same time that he was. So really kind of different world that we're talking about today. And our guest today is still working. In fact, as we were doing this chat, he is deep in rehearsal for a show that's going to be taking place with the Latino Theater Company in California, and that's a show that's going to be called Ghost Waltz. And we spent some time discussing this because it's a very fascinating play about a person you've probably never heard of, and that brings us deeper into the Latin theater scene, which, again, I'm not really super familiar with, and I doubt a lot of my viewers are today as well. And I hope nobody gets too mad here, because I have to remind folks, especially if they're new tuning in or newer fans, that typically Trek Untold, we are a Star Trek show, but if we actually spend like maybe 25% and talk about Star Trek on this podcast, that's kind of a miracle, and in most cases, it's less than that. And in today's episode, we're doing probably maybe 10%, I want to say, because everything else is just a whole new world to me, and I wanted to really delve into that. And also, really wanted to spend some time talking about Ghost Waltz and what this play means to an actor like Castulo, who has been doing this for decades, and now it's like a revolution or a renaissance in some ways for Latino performers. So this ain't going to be your typical episode of Trek Untold today. We've got something really unique this time around, and I can't wait for you guys to hear this interview. Really, Castulo is such an inspiring and motivating person, as I already said. This is an actor who we could say is in his autumn years, but when you talk to him and you listen to the way he reflects on the tulips and daisies of how he performs today, this is truly a man in the springtime of his career and his life, and that alone is just really, really spectacular to hear. And I'm trying to flower this up because, man, the way that he talks, oh my goodness, you're going to be so engrossed. I love the way that this man tells his stories. So let's go ahead now and meet Mr. Castulo Guerra and learn all about his time in the theater, on stage, on screen, on film, and everything in between. But before we start our chat with this week's guest, I want to remind you to please follow Trek Untold on social media, including Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. You can find this show on all of those platforms simply by searching for Trek Untold. Make sure you subscribe to this show, whether that's on the audio platform of your choosing or on YouTube, where the video version of this show lives. And speaking of, make sure to check out our YouTube channel more frequently for episodes of our new mini show, Tales from Trek Untold, as well as other sci-fi goodies. And of course, don't forget to leave ratings, reviews, comments, and whatever you can do no matter what platform you're on to enjoy this podcast and show others that you're digging it too. If you want to support this show financially, please consider becoming a Patreon member at patreon.com/TrekUntold. Shout out to Trek Long Island, who is having their second annual convention this summer at Hop Hog, Long Island, New York, from May 31st to June 2nd. Headlined by Melissa Navia from Strange New Worlds, Armin Shimmerman, Chase Masterson, and J.G. Hertzler from DS9, Ethan Phillips from Star Trek Voyager, and Gabrielle Ruiz from Lower Decks. Among many other modern and classic Trek shows, this 3-day event will feature autographs, panels, including some with yours truly, and other ways for you to hang out with the stars and meet your fellow fans. You can learn more about this event or buy tickets for it at treklongisland.com. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and beam in this week's guest. Computer, access interview file. Today's guest has shaken hands with a Ferengi, he's met a Terminator, and he survived the Purge, among many other things. Castulo Guerra, welcome to Trek Untold.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here. I hope you don't mind me correcting the pronunciation.
Please do.
You don't need to comply, but it's Castulo Guerra. Now,
Guerra, okay.
For short, you can call me Cass, and I will be happy. But I'm delighted to be here. I'm in the bowels, in the catacombs of this old bank building turned theater complex. There are 3 theaters plus all kinds of spaces, and there are like 400 children, young people, poets, doing a slam all around, and it's quite a commotion. So it's good to be here down in the catacombs of the Los Angeles Theater Center.
Yeah, this is the first time I've interviewed somebody in a catacomb, so that's pretty cool. And I am very excited to meet you today. And again, I want to thank you because right now you are currently in rehearsals for a play that you're in called Ghost Waltz, and that opens in May. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But before we get into that, Cass, I want to ask you, what's your earliest memory of Star Trek? Did you grow up watching the show at all?
I did watch it, but I came from Argentina
right
in 1971, and I was 26 at that time. And I was coming from a different, the television was not that advanced in Argentina at that moment. And so when I came here, it was more about catching up. There were certain shows, and of course, the original Star Trek, along with the Twilight Zone and so on. Those were the must see. But I was blown away in 68, 69 with 2001.
Yes.
Compliments of the big screen, I was able to watch in Argentina 15 times. It transformed my life, as I believe it may have transformed so other people. Or it tore down the walls of what we call normal and put us right into space.
Great way to put it there. And you mentioned that you grew up in Argentina. I believe you were born in Argentina. So I'd like to kind of explore that a little bit more and go into a bit of your background. So can you tell us who your parents were and what they did? And we mentioned you're growing up in Argentina here. But can you tell us what little Cass wanted to be when he grew up? Because according to my homework, my research, you were not thinking about being an actor originally.
Well, it's a long story, but at age 6, I was fascinated by the circus, and those were the days, when the caravans of the circus would come to town, and you would go, and there were animals, and the stench of the animal, environment, and then the tents. The flowing of the tents, which to me was magic. It's like the tent was breathing. So first it was a circus. Of course, I would come back home and try to reenact the acts of magic that I had seen at the circus. So that was my first attempt at either acting or entertainment. I'll have to fast forward to 1961. A Hollywood film by the name of Taras Bulba was filmed in Salta. I come from the province of Salta, Salta, and it was a whole commotion in town. A Hollywood film. The girls were going crazy, and we were all in altered states.
And that was the film with Yul Brynner, right?
Yul Brynner, Tony Curtis, Christine Kaufman. It didn't turn out to be a very good film, but the experience of watching it and being close to it and mostly the sting. And that is very important because we'll come back later to Ghost Waltz. It's about Cupid, hitting you with that almighty arrow that sends you for the rest of your life. A little anecdote. I was in the fourth grade of secondary school in cuarto grado, and some of the big guys, they played rugby, and that was a level that I didn't have. And they came back one day on a Monday and said, "Oh, I spent the weekend with my friend Yul Brynner." I went, "What?" I was 15. I was barely 16. What is that all about? And my eyes perked up on the guy. Yeah, we ate empanadas with Yul Brynner, and Tony Curtis is okay. And I went, "What is this?" "Oh, didn't you know? There's a film going to be made, and I'm going to be in it." I said, "Who are you going to be?" "Well, I have horses, so I'll be there, riding horses, and it's going to be wild. It's about the Turks, the Polacks, the Cossacks. I think it's the 1600s or something like that." Anyway, I have to confess, I died of envy. How could
I would do the same.
Oh, oh, I became feverish. That teenage fever. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't, just hyperventilating. And I had a little job. I had a job as librarian at an English institute called Anglo. And I was the librarian, and there was this beautiful Swedish teacher of English who would occasionally come in and ask for favors, and I would find the book. We had the old mimeograph, the old, you would put the ink, and it was a mess, but I was the only one who could use it. So she came in one day, and she would call me Mr. Guerra, okay? So could I ask a favor of you? She spoke English to me, which was a full treat at that age. I need to make copies of the script for Taras Bulba, and I just don't know. "Oh, I'll do it. I'll do it. By God, I'll do it." And I took it and did the job, and I kept for myself a copy. Okay, I wasn't supposed to, but I kept the bad copy. Okay, the smudged, inky copies. Anyway, she said, "By the way," and that's how all beautiful stories start, "if you want to see how they film this movie, I'll give you a tip. They won't let you in through the front huge. They were out on the fields, on hills, and with grass and trees and so on that belonged to the military. Those fields, the military allowed for the film company to use." So she said, "But there is a place where you can go under the fence and crawl up, and if you go 2 hills, you may just arrive at the place." Well, I did just that. I was covered in ticks because it was that kind of a field, and but I arrived, and as I crawled up, I was right behind the cameras and behind the director with the big speaker, and I heard action, and I tell you, boom, it went in. There were some tents, very, very much like the period. And this Cossack comes out, Yul Brynner, and out of the other one, Tony Curtis. And I was touching heaven with my hands. It was just unbelievable. And so that's how I fell for film. I fell for film, and that night I said to my dad, "That's what I want to do." Mind you, that happens in Ghost Walls as well. And the father goes, "No, no, no." My dad said, "No, no, no, that can't be. Where would you do that?" Salta, the north of Argentina, 1961. It wasn't impossible. He was right about that. And the next thing he said was, "But what would you live off of? How would you support yourself?" And I said, "I don't know. I'll figure something out." Well, jump on. I went to the University of Tucumán, which is 300 kilometers south of Salta. I went into medical school because that's what Dad wanted, right? Mm. I did two maddening years of that. And I enrolled in the drama school, brand new drama school. And when I saw that that was my passion, I went home and I said to my dad, "I'm quitting." And I'm telling you that before I walk into the house. So that was burning the sails. That was burning breaking up the chains. It was huge. I did theater for 8 years in Tucumán on the main stages. I became someone. I was 24, 25, young, full of energy. I became an English teacher, meaning I had the degree from the university, and I had always been interested in Shakespeare, in all these classics. And lo and behold, I got a Fulbright. It was offered to me, and they said, "Just choose where you would like to go." And of course, I took the map. You couldn't Google in those days, okay? And I said, Berkeley, New York, Brandeis, those places. And they said, the only place that wants you is KU, University of Kansas, at Lawrence, Kansas. And I said, "No, I can't do that. I can't tell my friends. My friends have been to Madrid, London, Paris, Berkeley. I'm not going to go to Kansas." But I did. And I was there for a year. I met a wonderful American friend from Maine who later on became my wife. And so that's where tricky fate comes in. Call it destiny. And I will mention it because that's what the play Ghost Waltz is about, destiny. But, when destiny taps you on the shoulder and says, "Look, you fool, over that way." Okay. So at the end of the Kansas year, it was a big thing. I was awarded a 3-month visit to New York, okay, by Fulbright. They extended the grant, and they said, "Do a field trip." And I went and I saw theaters. I met up with people. There was the festival at Lincoln Center. There were all kinds of things, the open theater, the living theater. It was maddening. It was so filled with experimental theater, which was my first choice, my first love. I had read profoundly the works of Grotowski and so on and so forth. And so talking to someone from International Theater Institute, ITI, at the Lincoln Center Festival, he said, "Why do you have to go back to Argentina?" I said, "Well, first of all, it's in the contract, and I have to. I have all my life, my work, everything there. Why don't you stay and do something? How about that play that you know of? It was Ceremony for a Murdered Black by Arrabal." He said, "You could do that." We can find you the theater, we can find you the people, a little salary weekly. And so I did in 1972 in New York at theater at St. Clement's, which was a church. I did Ceremony for a Murdered Black with actors from the Open Theater, which was a total treat. Raymond J. Barry was one, Tom Lillard the other, and I directed them with my madness. I was 27, going on 28 by then, and they, being such professionals used to the experiment, allowed me to direct them. And these were guys that you couldn't direct. They could run circles around you, and but it happened, and as it is, I stayed friends for life with Raymond Barry, and I did Ceremony at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, and the priest there, Father Kirk, said, I said, Father Kirk, we're thinking of getting married, because my friend, Christy, who came from Kansas to be with me, one night she said, this is all crazy. She said, how do you feel about me? And being the fool that I am, I said, I feel fine. What an idiot. So
Famous
then
last words.
oh my God, I get it. I said, let's get married. She said, no, you can't do it like that. Let's get married tomorrow. She said, no, you need blood tests, you need papers, you need things. And so I told that to Father Kirk. Father Kirk said, I must do the honors. So on December 15, 1972, we trekked up on the subway to the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. My stage manager, my main actress, and 4 other friends from Kansas were there. They were 6. And Father Kirk looked at us and was dismayed. He said, this is it? I thought theater people knew hundreds. I said, Father Kirk, this is all I have. He said, no. Wait a minute. We're going to do something here. And he went to the pews in the cathedral. It was snowing outside by now. He woke up every homeless that was sleeping there and said, if you're going to sleep in my church, you're coming with me. We're going to get this lovely couple married. And he brought 8 plus my 8 friends. They were 14. He said, let's hold hands and make a circle. And, that was it. It was history. We were married. That was the environment to our oh so poor wedding. And of course, later on, Grotowski and the Poor Theater and all that just went, all inside. I wasn't doing well for a while after this play was done. And he said, why don't you come and do what you do at the church? And he gave me the catacombs. There was space in the catacombs. There were 3 bishops buried. And we worked there, and we did an experimental group. And so that gave me a sense of hard work, dedication to the work, long-term rehearsals. That's not the case with Ghost Waltz, because we are on a low-budget, frantic schedule, and we are opening very soon.
Well, yeah, let's stick around in New York for a second. Let's stay in the 5 boroughs, because I wanted to ask you about one of your early shows that I could find on Playbill, which was you did some Shakespearean work. You did Coriolanus in 1979 at the Dale Court, and that was with Morgan Freeman and Denzel Washington. And I believe in that play you also had with you Roscoe Orman, who folks like me, they know growing up from Sesame Street as Gordon. So I'd love to hear any stories you have about working with Morgan and Denzel, and especially Roscoe, because keep in mind here, this is 79. Morgan and Denzel, they are young pups, essentially. They're great actors even back then, but they're still young.
Denzel had just come out of, I forget his university, but he had just come out. He was fresh out of school. Keith David was there.
Yes, he's there also.
At that time, he was David Keith, and he had to switch he switched from Keith David to David Keith because there was another actor by the same name. But yes, little story. I was doing everything in New York, as you know. Actors, dancers, poets, painters. They clean apartments. In my case, I found the specialty of floor refinishing. I was a master floorman, and that's what I was doing. But I was always in pain for the theater. I had done all kinds of things. And my wife, that wise lady, she said, why don't you go and audition at the public theater? I had already taken a one-man piece that I had done called Holiday for a Unicorn. And they said, look, we can't afford a one-man show at the public theater, but maybe at another time. So I went back. Mary Calhoun was the casting director. She saw me and she said, yeah, it happens we're having general auditions. Why don't you prepare a piece and bring it? And I prepared a piece from Macbeth, and I went and I auditioned, and they said, you're going to be in Coriolanus. And then later, you're going to be in Othello. You're going to be with us in the season. I was non-union. Get this? So you had to be in a union production to be able to, enter the union. So yes, I showed up at the park, and I, Morgan Freeman was not Morgan Freeman yet.
Yes, that is true.
Washington, Keith David, all wonderful, wonderful actors. Gloria Foster, who was the goddess of the time. And so we did Coriolanus. I had a small role, and Morgan Freeman was such a human being, is such an enormous actor and human being. He came up to me and said in his classic voice of God, he said, Cass, you're good. It's too bad. You should have had a better role. But the company, the Black Hispanic company had been formed before my arrival. So that's what there was. I played, Senator 3 and I was running all over the place. And so that was his comment, which I carry in my heart, because that was extremely generous. I mean, if, Morgan Freeman, Coriolanus said that, you better put it in a little box and save it. Then we worked Othello, which was part 2 of the summer season of 73, and with Raul Julia, Francis Connor, Michael Gross.
I believe Richard Dreyfuss was in that one too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was actually my next question, in fact, was to ask you about that, because we talked about a lot of theater people on this podcast, and one name that doesn't come up enough is Raul Julia. And I mean, that man, I feel like, folks my age, they may only know him from the Addams Family, but he was such an accomplished performer, and I really would love to hear about him.
Oh, Raul Julia was enormous. He had his own way of doing things. He could sing anybody under the seats. He could talk. He had a boisterous voice, very clear diction, and he never dropped his Nuyorican accent, which was delectable, which, by the way, was what Joseph Papp was after. He wanted the integration of the races, which is why the Black Hispanic company had been formed, and that was before the term African American came into play. We were all comfortable with Black, Hispanic. It wasn't Latino yet. So I had a very good Mark Lane-Baker. He was in Othello. He was the clown, and Mark Lane-Baker went on to work with Peter O'Toole in
My Favorite Year.
Yes, thank you. I knew it was an F, but Mark Lane-Baker, this was an awesome experience to have. I went to Mary Calhoun at the end, and I said, I'm from Argentina. I work well within a community. She said, we don't have room for you. You're going to have to do what all actors do, which is, and I said, what do they do? You have to go knock on doors, get an 8x10, build your resume. And that looked like Mount Everest to me. I didn't want to do that. That was the part but she insisted, and she said, but I'm going to give you the name of 3 agents that I like and that I work with. She gave me 3, 2 turned me down. They didn't know what to do with me. I was so weird, I wasn't Puerto Rican, I wasn't Mexican, I was, out of another planet. And STE, John Comerford, said, sure. He said, I don't know your work. You come very highly recommended, but I just don't. Wait a minute. Dialed a number and talked to casting for a play that was about to be done at Baltimore Center Stage, Watch on the Rhine. And I got the part. I was going to play a Romanian count who was a fake in the times of post-World War Washington, D.C. And Baltimore Center Stage got me into the union, And then I did several things. I went to the arena stage, and I went back occasionally to refinishing floors. I was refinishing a big, huge loft, 5,000 square feet. I worked alone to pocket the money because otherwise, but I had to work like a dog. And I was doing that. It was going to take me seven days to do this. And I, in those days we had answering service. You would call the answering service and they would say, you have nothing. Well, there were 10 messages from John Comerford. Where the hell are you? And oh my God, I had dust from top to bottom. My ears were humming. And I called on Friday and he said, never do this again. This is a film. It's very important. Now they're going to have to see you tomorrow, Saturday at 12:30. And I went, wait a minute. I was putting on the finish on Saturday. So I said, yeah, okay. And they say, they had called 10 times. They were very angry. So I went to refinish my floor at 12 o'clock. I ran out to the streets. They saw me, and I looked a disaster. I looked such a sad look. And they all went, wow. That was exactly what they were looking for. They were trying to cast 4 New York angels. One of them was a garbage man by the name of Gonzalez for the movie Two of a Kind with John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. So oh my God, can you stay? I said, no, I don't have time. And they all went, wow, this guy is something else. I had a floor that I had to finish. I came out, Morgan Freeman was there. I said, Morgan, how are you? How did it go with Brubaker? He said, yeah, not too good. I'm, auditioning the life of an actor. So long story short, they cast me in Two of a Kind, which worked 3 weeks in New York and 2 months in LA. Now I'm in California.
Attention all Starfleet personnel. New York's only fan-run Star Trek convention, Trek Long Island, is back this summer. Get ready for 3 days of sci-fi fun celebrating your favorite franchise in the Empire State. Meet the stars from Trek shows spanning different eras, including Melissa Navia and Yetide Padaki from Strange New Worlds, Gabrielle Ruiz from Lower Decks, Armin Shimmerman, Chase Masterson, J.G. Hertzler, and Kitty Swink from DS9, Ethan Phillips from Voyager, Janet Kidder, Tara Rosling, Conrad Coates, and Elias Tefexis from Discovery, and many more, including celebrities who haven't been at a Star Trek convention in years, like Clyde Kasatsu, Natalia Nogalic, and Daphne Ashbrook. Come meet your fellow fans. Take in a panel with your favorite podcasters. Enjoy Dinner with the Stars, featuring live musical performances. Meet authors, artists, and musicians, and so many more during this epic 3-day event brought to you by the talented and inclusive community that makes Star Trek go at warp speed. Trek Long Island takes place from May 31st to June 2nd at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Hauppauge, New York. Visit treklongisland.com for tickets, exclusive packages, and more information. Trek Long Island, going kindly this summer.
Let me throw you another question here, since we're now in Hollywood. Let's jump to 1991. And, I was talking to my girlfriend about you and telling her, the things we're going to talk about. And when I mentioned this role and I mentioned this movie, she was like, I know who that is. And she got so excited. And that's Terminator 2. I know the film really well, and I know your part really well. And you were Enrique, who is basically the character who helps out Linda Hamilton's character earlier. Basically, we don't see it happen, but it's who she comes to when, things are kind of going crazy. It's a fun scene, and I'd love to hear any stories you have about working with Linda Hamilton, about working with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and a very young Ed Furlong.
Yeah, that was casting. For the most part, you audition for 100 things and get 1 or 2 if you're lucky. That's the drill for us actors. And by 1991, I had a little house up on the Central Coast, so I would take the whole family there. I get to Cambria on the Central Coast, and there's a message. You have an audition, Monday. It was Friday midnight, and I wasn't happy about it. So my wife said, we go back because this is what you do. It was so true. So we turned around, came back. I picked up a script. They said the script is going to be downstairs. This is such a commodity these days.
Yes, it is.
Here's the attachment.
Smartphones make life so much easier and worse at the same time.
Look at this little thing, man, and it'll take you. You can Google anything, but we didn't in those days. The libretto, the script will be downstairs. So we arrived there like at 2, 3 in the morning. I was looking for a big fat script for, T2. And there was just one sheet in a very skinny manila envelope. I read, and it says Enrique, which said, siempre como culebra. No, the dialogue.
Yes.
Enrique, you're pretty jumpy, Connor. That was the line. But I was furious. How dare they? They dare drag me down with my family. I will never do this again. I don't care about Schwarzenegger. Of course, on Monday, I was there because my wife said, you got to go. Castulo, as they call me, being Castulo. Linda Hamilton can't be here. James Cameron can't be here. But please, he has asked me to just go wild, just do something wild. And I was in such a bad mood. I was dressed all in black. I did something that eventually got to James Cameron. And they called back and they said, they want you to meet Linda Hamilton. I called the agency and I said, listen, what's going on? Do you know anything? We know nothing. So I arrive at the same place. It was a casting. It was the headquarters for Terminator 2. And she's almost here. She's arrived. She's walking in. She walks in, walks right up to me and plants a huge kiss on my cheek and says, I'll see you inside. I'm so sorry I'm late. Talk of love at first sight. She's not only gorgeous, but a wonderful human being, a woman to write books about. Linda Hamilton is something else. That was my first experience. And then James Cameron was inside. We walk in and he says, look, you have the part. You blew me away with the audition. I want to see how you two work together. And we did something. And he said, good, see you on the set. I went to the agent and, you had to go to the corner, find some coins, and it didn't work. And then, what do you know about this? Oh, they just called, you're in. Good for you. So that was it. It was crazy. And the next thing, we shot the beginning part of the movie, sometime in October of 1990, we were in Lancaster, in the desert, at a pig farm, and they said the pigs have gone to a motel, which I never quite understood, but that the technical term. The place smelt of pig dung,
That's
and
awful.
such a strong smell. But that's where we shot the Enrique Salceda camp, and and it was just wonderful. We'd had a read through where I had met Robert Patrick, the kid who was no longer a kid, and everybody, and there were new scenes added because James Cameron had said, "I'm going to write you in. You're going to do more." And there was a whole part at the end of the movie, no, the middle part, where the T-1000 comes to the Enrique camp. He stabs me with one of his mad fingers, rolls it inside and says, "I know this hurts. Where is she?" But Cameron came on a Monday and said, "You know what? I'm sorry, Cass. It's gonna cost me $500,000 to shoot that scene. I can't afford it. I love you, but that scene is going to go to Linda Hamilton." And that's what happened at the end, with he stabs her and says, "I know this hurts. Where is he?" Meaning the boy. Okay. And okay. She's going to have the falling asleep scene on a bench. The sun is setting. It's the desert. There are, those weed balls,
Tumbleweeds.
Yeah. And he had James Cameron, who's a madman, had announced first thing in the morning, "I need to get this at sundown. The weather is good, all is good, but you need to make sure that I shoot it, otherwise I'm going to kill somebody." Well, so all day long, people running back and forth, back and forth. When he calls action around 5 o'clock, out of nerves and out of, it's a huge production. They had left two huge fans, air, wind, sand fans in the distance, like at 200 feet or more. And he goes, "God!" He wanted to kill somebody. What are those things doing there? So now the sun is coming down. Adam Greensbury is measuring, and James Cameron comes and says, "Can you get me someone who can do this job? I need to shoot this. Can't you get James, please give me a break. I'm he's measuring the light." And finally he called action, and she carves the message, falls asleep, and the sun goes down. It was just magical. But and James Cameron got his shot on Sunday before. They had, as he put it, we trashed the Big Mac. They had gone on the canals and they had shot on a Sunday, one Sunday. So it was feverish. They went on 6 more months. It was, I believe, March, and they were still at it. By then, they were pulling guns at each other, threatening to kill each other because it was mad. That's by the time that the helicopter scene, the bike helicopter scene by the parking lot, is happening. So that's understandable. I have wonderful memories of it. I'm going to tell you one comment from James Cameron during, looping and so on, ADR. He came and said, "Cass, you went Zorba on me because my first appearance is, que bueno ver."
Zorba the Greek.
Yeah, and that was not in the audition, you see. And that's one thing that I always wondered. He could have told me. He could have said, "Listen, cut the crap. just go for what you showed me in the audition. But it happened. I don't know if it's me. I don't know if it's actors, acting, what have you. But in the moment, things were so tense, I thought I would bring that.
Hey everybody, we'll get right back to the interview in 1 second, but I wanted to remind you all to check out Trek Untold over at Patreon. Patreon is the best way to directly support creators of things you like through a monthly subscription of an amount that you can choose. Trek Untold has a few different tiers already with different benefits, ranging from early access to episodes, the ability to ask a future guest questions, exclusive merchandise, and other bonuses that I'd love to offer, but first I need to grow that Patreon community to do that. Trek Untold has been around since mid-2020 and has grown a ton since then, thanks to listeners and viewers like you. Through a platform like Patreon, you can help me keep improving the quality of each episode and keep bringing you new interviews with folks that make the Star Trek universe what it is. If this community can grow more over on Patreon, I can offer new perks like watch parties, exclusive Trek Untold episodes, being able to directly interact with guests, and other things, but in order to do that, I need to know my audience wants these things. The best way to tell me what you want is by supporting us on Patreon, so please, check us out at patreon.com/TrekUntold today and become a bigger part of the Trek Untold family. And now, back to the interview. Cass, let's beam into our Star Trek discussion right now here. And you were Seth Mendoza, Season 3, Star Trek The Next Generation, The Price. I'm curious to know, had you ever auditioned for Star Trek before, or was this the first time you'd ever auditioned for that show?
No, I don't believe so, okay? I don't believe so. Here's the setup. I opened a journal from Wednesday, September 20th, 1989. My boy was about to be born. I was auditioning like crazy, preparing the house, calling the doctor. And they, sure enough, they called and said, you have an audition at 11 o'clock on Wednesday. And I almost said no, but again, my wife said, this is what you do. So I showed up there very nervous. Contractions have started. And there is a line of like 24 seated in a corridor. And I'm not going to make it. My boy's going to be born and I'm not going to be there. So I went to casting and I said, look, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to impose. And I know there are all these wonderful colleagues out there, but my child is about to be born. I'm going to have to leave. No. Wait. Come with me. So they ushered me in. There was a big table of 6, 8 people. Castulo, how are you? I said, well, my child is about, oh, what are you doing here? Go do that. You got the part. So it was the most, talk of magical, We had just had the moon harvest, the harvest moon, pardon me. Don't forget, I'm from Argentina. I still talk funny. We had the harvest moon. The weather was beautiful. It had rained. I had wings and butterflies and angels in my head. So I ran to the hospital, Good Samaritan. Our boy was born a little past midnight, 14 minutes past midnight, which is why he was born on September 21st. So having been cast on a Wednesday, I assume, because I have to confess, I didn't write a thing about Star Trek. I had my kid, the heavens had just come to our arms in this manner, so, but I think within the next 2 weeks of him being born, I was called on the set. My call was 5 o'clock in the morning. And that I do want to talk about. As a guest star, as a guest actor, you land on a parachute on any show that you do, okay? Unless you are a regular principal, you don't know what you're going to find, and you have to be ready, like in the war, to act and perform and do and kind of click. You have to. You can't have any pretense. You can't have. You are at their service. You're a cog in the machinery of the show, and Yeah, I have to tell you, I hadn't been watching Star Trek because we had a kid.
Yeah.
This was our second kid, and you know, so at 5 o'clock I go to makeup, and there are these wonderful, made up creatures with deep voices, phenomenal characters. You are not on this earth anymore, my friend. Even though it's the lot at Paramount, you are on the set for Star Trek. And people walking down the streets dressed and made up in these manners, uh, it's a separate reality. It's another story. You're entering the Twilight Zone, not only of film, but of Star Trek. I remember we're ready for you, Castulo, and they brought me through these lilac or lavender tunnels that connected, and they made the ship, the guts of the ship, and we went down. And yes, you are elsewhere. You are in the galaxy, working uh, uh, with Patrick Stewart, and all the others, which is phenomenal. Very generous, very warm, very solid.
And we should mention too that, Patrick Stewart comes from a very obvious theatrical background. Frakes also did a lot of Broadway work early in his career, Brent Spiner. So you work with some big theatrical names here also. And I've heard in the past when folks who were in the theater world and they came and acted on the show, and like, let's say Patrick Stewart found out, like that made him kind of connect a little bit more. Did you have that kind of feeling or that kind of experience when you met these folks?
Immediately. And it was the camaraderie. He could listen to you, and he would ask questions and listen because he wasn't in a rush. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, we're all so, even though this thing wasn't around, we're all distracted. But he and the team were phenomenal, were very good. And I most precious was the line about, "You must play poker, Captain." What is that? Some sort of a game? That the line just stayed for life. And uh, I believe I did everything in one day. It was very convenient for me. I may have come back, but I can't remember because I had a kid in my mind. I had a baby.
That must have been a very long day.
Rushed home, to wash him, put him to sleep, and so on, and to celebrate and all that. But Star Trek, we actors do a lot of guest starring, and I have. You do big roles, small roles, memorable roles. You die, I die a lot, and we'll come to that later. But somehow, and some things disappear. But Star Trek keeps coming back. The fan mail that I get from the Trekkies, the Star Trek people, is huge. Along with Prison Break, which also has a lot. Of course, The Purge 2 is also in that category. The Terminator people, you can't avoid Terminator, but it's so interesting. We had a friend who worked at JPL, and they were having a child too. And for him, I was someone else just because I had worked on Star Trek. He had no interest for television, for shows, for drama, for any of that. And I revisited a part of the episode today. The technical information, the cosmic information, the engineering information, the science that those shows had was enormous. Apart from the fact that the names were beautiful, Jean-Luc Picard, etc. Just the flavor of it, the flair of the other world. And in all truth, it was all one-dimensional. I mean, the costumes weren't otherworldly, the colors, it was shot in a simple manner, but the number of characters that went through the episodes, the Ferengi and all of those, was just so visually attractive that you became mesmerized. And I think that's why the longevity of the show, it's just wonderful. It made an epoch. I mean, to have so much science going on while this was still not there, so much science, so much. We have gone from the fax machine, from the answering service to the answering machine to the beeper. Remember that creature? And now I could do it right now for you. I can call my sister in Argentina via WhatsApp, and that's a miracle. I could Google anything. It's phenomenal. So we have come a very, very long way. This is 35 years ago, which may seem like intensely old. And I was pretty much young in those days. But those things that stay, the stuff that permeates time, that time can't beat, is phenomenal. I love it. Those things that are here to stay for forever. So that was my anecdote with Star Trek and a child being born.
So, Cast, I know that right now you are in deep rehearsals for Ghost Waltz. We've been talking about it throughout this entire interview so far. I'd love it if you can kind of tell my audience what Ghost Waltz is about and why this play is so special.
I want you to have a preview of what my look is going to be. That's why the Dickensian look. I'm going to have glasses, and I play a Jewish Austrian queer music professor in Mexico, and the play is called Ghost Waltz, which I was trying to think of a translation in Spanish, and it would be Valse Fantasma, as Phantom Waltz, or Waltz of Phantoms, which is what it is. I think it is a waltz of phantoms.
Qué nombre fantástico.
Un nombre fantástico, totalmente. That's the essence. It's the dream state, dreams that come true, the age-old, union of what's real and what's unreal, what's in the mind. And it has to do with genius, with talent. It has to do with the birth of something awesome that will endure time. And the sum up of the story is that we are all going to die, and only the work, the art, the music is going to survive. And the other thing that the play Ghost Waltz, written by Oliver Mayer, directed by Alberto Barbosa, tackles is that people have forgotten. In this particular case, it's the story of Juventino Rosas. He was an indigenous musician that came out of Guanajuato. He was part Indian, okay? His father, his brother, they were musicians as well. The father was shot at a bar. He was a drunk, but he went on to Mexico and somehow got into the music conservatory. At that time, there was a famous soprano that here in the play is named Nightingale, as in the story Nightingale. And so what the playwright has done is has put together Juventino Rosas, Nightingale, and Scott Joplin, because Juventino Rosas went on to New Orleans, to Chicago, and eventually to Cuba. He was a fireball that was dead at age 26. just like Jimi Hendrix, very much like, so many others. And in the case of Juventino Rosas, he composed a beautiful waltz known as Sobre las Olas, which is Over the Waves, which for posterity was announced as belonging to Strauss. It was that good. Okay. And so it's a fight for identity. And he's now surrounded, his father dies. The witch that gives him an amulet died, and his professor of music dies, and so now we are ghosts floating around his life, his story, because it is about telling one's story, and we applaud, we cry, we curse, we revere, we rejoice. These are a community of ghosts that, number one, I think they're having a very good time being dead and helping their protege, Juventino Rosas, who is love struck by Nightingale. Nightingale her face is painted white because she wants to be white. She thinks that to succeed in this world, she's Mexican, you have to be white. It is, let us not forget, 1894. And she has a career. She was the first soprano to play the concert halls of Europe, as she played in Vienna. I mean, she was known. They built her an opera house in Mazatlan and elsewhere. There's one in Mexico City as well. So she was revered. She was not a nice person. She was fierce. And so that in the play becomes this fierce force of negativity that conspires against Juventino Rosas' love, inspiration, and the title of his song, Over the Waves, it just says it all. But over the waves with a tempestuous sea underneath. So that's the metaphor for the play. I can't tell you who wins in the end because there is no such thing. There is so much music in this piece, so much. We have wonderful people. Quetzal Guerrero is an unbelievable violinist. He's world-renowned. He trained at the Suzuki School in Japan. He lives in Sydney, Australia. He has studied the gypsy violin music of the Romanians and so on, knows flamenco. He is originally from Brazil. So he is a walking multinational of music,
Seriously, yeah.
He's a fiend. You can't stop him. They had to say, please stop playing for a while. We're doing lights right now. He's a beautiful human being. She, Natalie Peñacomas, is from Santo Domingo. She's a superb soprano who has played the scenes of Europe, La Scala. Right now, she's not with us because she's doing a concert in Santo Domingo. She has won Emmys and so on and so forth. And then, of course, Ricky Peugeot, who is he has been the pianist for Christina Aguilera and Madonna. The guy is, you can't believe what he can do on the piano. And he too is not here today because he flew into Las Vegas. He's got concerts and things. This, my friend, is crazy. I'm just an actor. I'm here from 10 to 8:30 or 6:30, what have you. They call me at 10. I'm here. Maybe it's an age thing. I don't have bookings elsewhere. I wish I could tell you that I have to be in Berlin tomorrow, but that's not the case. But I'm glad to be here.
You can lie to me and I'll believe you. It's all good.
But it's beautiful. It's beautiful. This is just wonderful. The talent that has been gathered like out of a garden of music and musicians. They have allowed me in the realm of musicians. I play the bandoneon, the squeeze box. The heathens call it accordion, but it's the bandoneon. I play that, and Alberto Barbosa, the director, said, "Why don't you play that at the beginning? There is a mysterious drone that we play, and I use the bandoneon there, and then I have a little bit on the silver flute during a Nawat prayer." But visually, I believe it's going to be stunning. The music is going to be glorious. We just have to know our lines, hit the right spot, and and hopes that the audience will join us in this voyage for and through and about music.
I mean, it sounds like an amazing experience, and it sounds like this is kind of just like the perfect summation of the different things you've done through your life and career. And, in the last hour, we've kind of taken a whirlwind tour of the different things you've done professionally and life experiences you've had personally. And it brings me back to something you said a while ago, which was how, like some people, let's say 50 years ago, whatever, on New York, they didn't quite know what to do with you yet. And I think that is a common sentiment I've heard from a lot of Latin actors who have been on this podcast, where even in the 90s, a lot of folks still didn't know what to do with these Latin actors. And today you've got stories like Ghost Waltz, where this is, the name of this podcast is Trek Untold. Ghost Waltz is telling an untold story. And I feel like that couldn't have happened the way that it is, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So I'd love to, looking at your career as a whole, where are we today that we can have these stories being told? And what does it feel like for you to be part of this journey still here in 2024?
I have to be honest, I'm going to be 79 on August 24, which is going to bring me to yet another topic. Bear with me, but I am privileged. I can easily call this my path with a heart. It's the path that when I told my dad that's what I want to do about Taras Bulba, he said, "You're crazy. You can't. How are you going to survive?" Well, this is, if not the end of the story, it's the mature story. I have been able to survive. I've been allowed into circles. I have worked, you said it, with Freeman, Denzel Washinton, wonderful people.
Amazing luminaries of stage and screen.
Patrick Stewart, just amazing people. Being from Argentina doesn't make it that easy, because in New York there is the Caribbean, Puerto Rican, Cuban force. In Miami there is the Cuban force, and here we have a very present Mexican Chicano culture. And I have not been a part of that, but I have been a satellite to that. Every year I play the bishop in the grand production of La Virgen de Guadalupe at the Cathedral of Los Angeles, and I've been doing that for 22 years. I started young, and but it's really a thrill to see how this is. It seems the path with the heart is still happening. On a cherry note, last year I was asked to record the complete collected fictions of Jorge Luis Borges, our Argentine Homer, our grand narrator. And I spent 3 months recording huge. I mean, the complete version is 27 hours, and then they have 4 different books of the parts. But that was the treat of a lifetime. I had recorded Soñemos Juntos, written by Pope Francis before, but I tell you, attempting to communicate Borges was quite the climb of Everest. And I'm so proud and happy that I did that.
Well, to kind of bring this interview to a close here, normally I'll end it on a Star Trekky note, but I think today I want to end it a little bit differently here. And we mentioned your children earlier, Ian, who is an actor now. You have a daughter named Clarity, who we didn't talk as much about today. But, one of the questions I like to ask at the wrap up is, tell us the most valuable lesson that somebody taught you about life or your profession. And I want you to kind of take that question here and put it towards, let's say your kids find this interview 20, 30 years from now, and it's something you want to say to them. So like, what is the most valuable lesson that you learned about your life or your profession that you still think about and use today, and something that you want to pass on to your children and to our listeners today?
Follow your bliss. That's the one. You know that. You know who said that too. Follow your bliss. Follow your dream. That's what Ghost Waltz is about. That's what Star Trek is about. The dream of space, the dream of going where no man has gone before. And that must be in the human genes. That must be, back to the bone that the apes tossed in the air and magically transformed into that amazing shuttle to the moon. That's in our genetics, I think. Thank God, and so much so that they had to imagine that maybe a mysterious monolith from somewhere else came and planted that in us apes. But it's hard. It's not easy. The path with the heart, you got to commit to it. And I can only put it together with climbing Everest. It ain't easy. You might die in the attempt, either going up to summit or coming back down. Shackleton is another one that is an inspiration to me. In 1914, traveling by boat to Antarctica, to the pole, and really against fierce, cold, freezing waves with bad equipment. But the guy did it, not only once, but several times. And he had a team out of 5,000 people. He chose 28, the best in the world. And he crossed the ocean with that, which is a metaphor for what you have to do. Just, gather your forces, yourself, have all the elements, put it all on your backpack and go forward and try to find it. I'm enormously proud of my children. Ian, who is kind of following the steps, he's narrating books and so on, as you know. He's doing all kinds of things. My daughter is at the University of Iowa. She's in the film department doing videos for the university. She's a force of nature. And I didn't mention her because she is so much her own. She doesn't need anybody, putting word for her. But we are fortunate to have our son Ian with us at home. We have a recording studio. So we are that little unit, and sparks and things happen from there. And I asked them, should I do this play? What do you think? They came to the read-through, okay, the reading in the beginning. And both my wife and my son said, you gotta do it. How could you think not doing it? I said, but, I'll be home, I'll be gone, I'll be home late. And you have to do it. You've got to do it. And which brings me back to, I listen to my angels. I listen, pay attention. I have all my system open, because you never know who is going to tell you, go that way. And you better go that way.
Well, thank you so much, Cass. This has been amazing here. Little boy growing up in Argentina, snuck onto a film set, and that changed the entire direction of his life. And you're doing it here. You're on the verge of hitting the big 80, and then hopefully from there to the big 90, y 100, y también, everything after that. So, you've lived a heck of a life. I've been enjoying this inspirational journey. And for folks who want to see Ghost Waltz and see more of Cass and this amazing cast, go ahead and visit latinotheaterco.org/ghostwaltz. Going to be running from May 4th through June 2nd at the Los Angeles Theater Center. So head over to that website for more details. And of course, we're going to have links in the show notes, so you can click on there. So if you're in the LA area, please go visit, tell them Trek Untold sent you. But yeah, you're going to want to see this. It sounds amazing. Cass, again, thank you so much. Mil gracias for all your time today. You've been amazing.
You've been very graceful. Greetings to all your audience.
Well, thank you so much. And I mean it when I say it. I don't normally say this in the show, but I'm going to do it here. Let's get Trekkie. Live long and prosper, my friend. You're amazing.
Love you, man. Be well.
That's it for this week's episode of Trek Untold. Thank you for checking it out. Don't forget to follow us on social media, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Trek Untold, and subscribe wherever you are listening to or watching on. And that includes the audio versions on whatever platforms that might be, and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@TrekUntold. If you'd like to support this show financially, please consider visiting patreon.com/TrekUntold to become a member of this show. And along with getting access to all sorts of wonderful perks, you'll also know that you're helping out this show continue to thrive, survive, and make new content all the time. I'm Matthew Kaplowitz. This has been Trek Untold. Thanks for watching. And until next time, always remember, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars, is powered by the Rageworks Podcast Network and affiliated with Nerd News Today.